UFC Fight Night Des Moines, Sandhagen versus Figueiredo is this weekend. I'm going to be giving my entire breakdown and predictions for the entire card, starting from the first prelim of the night all the way to the big main event. Starting with Juliana Miller versus Ivana Petrovic. Ivana Petrovic is going to win this fight. Juliana Miller is terrible, 4-3. She's awful. She has no idea. I was about to say she has no idea what she's doing on the feet, and I don't even think that's necessarily true. I just don't think she has a bone in her body that can harm another human. To be brutally honest, Ivana Petrovic, I think that she'll just be better on getting it to the ground, and I think she'll be able to implement her grappling ability. I think that generally when it comes to a women's fight, they're not going to be the most active people on the feet. And if you can have a grappling advantage over your opponent, you're at least going to get her against the cage. So I think Ivana Petrovic, there might be a lot of that in this fight. She could also get her down and submit her. I wouldn't be shocked at that. But I'm going to say that Ivana Petrovic gets a win, 29-28. Or actually, no, 30-27, unanimous decision, grappling. Maybe gets a submission in the third round. Moving up the card. Thomas Peterson versus Don'Tale Mayes. I'm going with Thomas Peterson. Now, if you look at his photo on the UFC website, he looks like he doesn't work out a day in his life. All right, he looks like he sits in his basement and he's got the Cheeto fingers, all that stuff that they like to say. However, Don'Tale Mayes is the king of being absolutely dog shit, in my opinion, in the UFC heavyweight division. Now, he's like a big, athletic, seemingly good for heavyweight guy. But to be brutally honest, he doesn't really have anything on the feet for his opponents, and he doesn't really have a great ground game. And Thomas Peterson will throw a jab at you, and he'll also go for a takedown occasionally. Now, there is a big reach and height advantage here for Don'Tale Mayes, so I am a little bit concerned about that for Thomas Peterson. However, I do think Thomas Peterson is overall better than Don'Tale Mayes, and his last loss, yeah, it was to Shamil Gaziev, and it was in the first round. Shamil Gaziev is a much better opponent than Walter Walker. Walter Walker's alright, but Shamil Gaziev is a lot better. Also, Don'Tale Mayes, more miles on the clock, more beatdowns have been taken. Record is very poor to look at. Thomas Peterson has at least won fights, and he's still relatively young. Don'Tale, he's 33, Peterson's 30. They're both going to cut to 265, the fat fucks. But I'm going to say Thomas Peterson gets the win. I'm going to say he does. I might regret that one, but I do think that he'll win. I do think that he's just more skilled than Don'Tale Mayes, and I don't think Don'Tale Mayes is good at all. So, Thomas Peterson gonna get the win. I'm gonna say by boring decision. Moving up the card, Gaston Bolaños versus Quang Le. So Quang Le, I believe his last fight was in the Road to UFC final, and he lost. So I don't really understand why he's in the UFC, because he lost by KO, and he did not look that good in that fight. But I guess they kept him in the UFC. He's 33 years old at bantamweight. That's not good. Gaston Bolaños won his last fight, actually, to Cortavius Romeus. Should have been cut from the UFC before that, but he was able to get a win and save his career, so now he's got another fight. Walmart Ilia Topuria. Gaston Bolaños, he can have power on you. He can get you up and against the cage and beat you in boxing exchanges. Now, the last thing about Bolaños, he is slow as shit. And Quang Lee's going to be faster than him. He's going to beat him to the punch. He's going to be more active. He's going to be throwing the jab. I think he's going to be feinting a lot more. But I do think Bolaños will have the bigger shots when they land, and I don't think Quang Lee is good enough to take those shots. So I'm actually going to say third round TKO for Gaston Bolaños. He gets this one done. 2-fight win streak for him in Big 2025. Moving up the card, Marina Rodriguez versus Jillian Robertson. This is actually a very good fight. Again, I don't know if any of you noticed this. Jillian Robertson's been on a win streak lately. And her last fight was the week after the Canada card. And now this time, it's a week before the Canada card. And she's Canadian. And she's like one of the better women's ranked fighters now. And I get that they have like 3 women's fights at the top of that card. So with who is it? Jessica Andrade versus Jasmine Jasudavicius. Yeah. Valentina Shevchenko versus Manon Fiorot. And then Grasso versus Natalia Silva. So I get that you don't want to put another high-ranked women's fight on that card, but why the fuck two times in a row where she's fighting on a card the week before or the week after the Canada card? Like, that just makes no sense when she is the Canadian. Like, you should try and get her on the card, right? But no, I guess. But whatever. Let's talk about the fight. Marina Rodriguez is much more technical than Jillian Robertson. Marina Rodriguez is going to be much better on the feet than Jillian Robertson. Marina Rodriguez has actual skill, speed, and athleticism on the feet. Now, she is also 38 years old. She's coming off a loss to Yasmin Lucindo. It was a close fight. Nothing really to care about in that fight. But she didn't look great, to be brutally honest. And Rodriguez, she's now lost 2 in a row. Her last one to being Jessica Andrade. Jillian Robertson's on a hot streak. And what she essentially does is she will get you down and ground and pound you. And then will either submit you or finish you with TKO ground and pound. That is what she likes to do. That is her bread and butter. She's gotten in fantastic shape recently. You've seen it in her fights. She's really in great shape. Her cardio's up there. I believe she trains with Dean Thomas. She's 29. She's on the up. And she's a fantastic grappler. Marina Rodriguez's biggest flaw is against people who can grapple and implement grappling. So, and the only reason I felt like she lost against Jessica Andrade is because Jessica Andrade has just a little more power on the feet and will catch you over the top and make it look like it hurt you. So, Marina Rodriguez, I think she's going to lose this one. I think Marina Rodriguez is getting to the end of her career. And I think Jillian Robertson's on the way up, and I think that if she wins this fight, she will be a fight or 2 away from, probably 2 fights away from a title shot. So I'm going to say Jillian Robertson gets this one done. And I'm going to say by submission. I'm going to say 3rd round submission for Jillian Robertson. Round 1 is close. She gets a takedown or 2. You know, Rodriguez gets up, but you can tell that Robertson's starting to implement her game plan and get the fight going her way. 2nd round, Robertson picks it up, gets her down, and towards the end of the round hurts her with really bad ground and pound. And then in the 3rd round, more ground and pound, more top mount position, and then eventually is able to grab the submission, either maybe the arm bar from the top, or maybe she goes for I could see some sort of Kimura. Maybe we'll see something like that. Yeah, Jillian Robertson, 3rd round submission. She's going to get this one done. Moving up the card, Brian Loader versus Azamat Bekaev. This is actually a really good fight. This is a good card, guys. This is a very good fight. Azamat Bekaev is a great fighter. I really think he's one of the more underrated guys in the middleweight division right now. What he did to Zachary Reese, I think Zachary Reese is actually okay. I do think Zachary Reese is okay. Do I think he's great? No. I do think he's okay. And I do think that he is actually going to be a guy who's going to be one of those unranked, like, gatekeepers of the middleweight division. I think he may, I don't see him ever getting in the rankings, but I do think that he'll be in that area for a while. And doing that on 5 days' notice or whatever it was for a pay-per-view card, and KOing him stiff with mean ground and pound. Now, I will say a lot of those shots were back of the head. Back of the head shots are legal, as we all know. And Azamat Bekaev is very good. Very good. He's back quickly, too. That was in January 18th on the LA pay-per-view. He's already back early May, coming off a first-round KO. I believe it was a first-round KO. He's fighting Ryan Loder, which Ryan Loder, obviously, tough champion. Older, though, 33 years old. For a tough champion, not something you generally want to see. He's only 8-1 as a pro, though, so not too many miles on the clock. He's good size for the middleweight division. He's very decent on the feet, too. Like, Ryan Loder isn't a pushover on the feet. That's why I do think that Ryan Loder will be a very good UFC middleweight for the time that he's here. I just don't think he'll get onto a big run or anything, just because I just don't think he has enough time. Azamat Bikov, on the other hand, I could actually see doing that. And I think Azamat Bikov has a lot of potential in this middleweight division to go far. I mean, there was a story that came out recently about how he nearly fought Hamzat in a gym, like, beef, because, like, Hamzat said something shitty about Islam, and then Bikov was like, brother, you can say that, brother. And then they were about to, like, spar, and they were clearly upset, but they didn't or something because they wanted them at a fight. So, Azamat Bikov, he's 19-3. I mean, obviously a lot of these guys beat Can Crushers, but I really do think that Bikov is very decent, and I think it'll take someone a little bit better than Ryan Loder to beat him. So I'm actually going to pick Azamat Bikov by third round, or I'm going to say late second round TKO. Azamat Bikov gets it done. Ryan Loder looked good in moments, but I think just gets outdone. And I don't like the fact that he beats Robert Valentin by TKO on tough, and then just, like, waits this long to get into the cage. Like, that was in August. He's back in May. Like, I just don't like that for him. Like, I think he should have been back early in the year, not this late. We're almost mid-year now, so I think Ryan Loder is. I don't think he's in the right position to win this fight. I do think that he can win fights in the UFC, and I do think he'll beat the bottom of the barrel guys, but he's not going to beat Azamat Bikov. So I'm gonna say Bikov second round TKO. He gets it done, and we have a new prospect on our hands. Moving up the card, Yana Santos versus Miesha Tate. Ugh. This is gonna be ugly to watch, but Miesha Tate's gonna win. I'm being so brutally honest. Miesha Tate is going to win. Something I thought about recently was, like, Miesha Tate. You had to think about how hard Miesha Tate was probably training at the time when she was in her prime, fighting Ronda Rousey twice. You got to think about, like, she was always second at the time when women's MMA was building up. And you got to think she was probably training really hard to beat Ronda Rousey. And Miesha Tate is 38 years old, and she is in great shape. She's in fantastic shape for her age. And I think she's still really committed to the training. Now, will she actually do something in the UFC? I don't think so. Like, currently in the UFC. But Yana Santos is not going to be the person that's going to beat her. That's just what I believe. So, I'm picking Miesha Tate. She's got really much better grappling than Yana Santos. Yana Santos isn't much bigger than her. She's going to try and keep it on the feet. And I think Miesha Tate's okay enough on the feet to not get completely destroyed. So, I'm going to say Miesha Tate, and I'm going to say by decision. Moving up the card to the main card. Jeremy Stephens versus Mason Jones. Let's go. This is going to be an awesome fight. I'm going to pick Mason Jones by dominant decision. I could see this being like a Mason Jones party where he just comes in and looks fantastic, and Jeremy Stephens will just refuse to go down or be hurt or even look like Mason Jones' shots are hurting him. And Mason Jones will be landing like 50 significant strikes a round, while Jeremy Stephens will land like 20. And when he lands, though, we'll all be like, oh, you know. And then Mason Jones will just continue to pit, you know, pat, 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 pat. And I think he beats Jeremy Stephens. At this point in Jeremy Stephens' career, I just don't see him competing with a guy like Mason Jones. Mason Jones, former UFC fighter, lost, got out of the promotion, won. I believe he's on a 4-fight win streak since then on the regional scene. now back in the UFC, ready to go. I like this for him. He's 15-2. Jeremy Stephens is a one-and-done deal. It is his hometown, but it's a one-and-done deal coming out of BKFC. I don't like it for him. I think Jeremy Stephens, I'm like excited for it. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for him to fight in his hometown. He might retire from combat sports as a whole, unless he gets to the McGregor fight in bare knuckle in the future. But I really just think that Jeremy Stephens, I think he'll be definitely done in the UFC after this fight. But I think this is going to be a hard one to watch, and I think he's going to kind of brutalize Jeremy Stephens. But Jeremy Stephens will just never be hurt or like phased throughout it at all. So I'm going to pick Mason Jones, 30-27, dominant decision. Stephens has his moments, cracks him a few times, but Mason Jones ultimately beats him. And Mason Jones is not like levels above Jeremy Stephens on the feet. You could even argue Jeremy Stephens is better on the feet. I could see massive improvements going into this fight, and I could also see him implementing the grappling to where Stephens has to think about the grappling, and that's when Jones gets his striking off. So that's all I'm going to say about this fight. Moving up the card, Cameron Smotherman versus Seri City. This is an interesting fight. Now, Seri City won his last fight to Garrett Armfield. Very close fight. Gassed out towards the end. Cameron Smotherman's coming off his win against Jake Hadley, where he won very convincingly. And Jake Hadley obviously had a win at bantamweight, where he beat Callum Loughran on a week's notice or whatever it was, moving up a weight division. Now, I want to have a few points about Cameron Smotherman beating Jake Hadley. At the time, that was a very impressive win, but when you think about it, the way Jake Hadley also performed in his last fight that caused him to get cut, or no, that was his last fight, was it not? I believe he got cut after the Smotherman fight. Oops. But seeing that happen to him, Smotherman could just be really, really good. But I also think very low of Callum Loughran. I really don't think Callum Loughran is good at all. I'm happy he's gone. He's terrible. He needs to go win. Just to be brutally honest. So that wasn't a great win from Jake Hadley. I mean, it was a good win for his career, but Cameron Smotherman showed up a few days' notice and absolutely disposed of Jake Hadley. So I think Cameron Smotherman is very decent, but I also don't rate Jake Hadley very high. I think Garrett Armfield is a lot better than Jake Hadley. Garrett Armfield had a really, really close fight where he nearly beat Brady Highstand in moments, and Brady Highstand is personally one of my prospects at bantamweight that I do think actually has a lot of potential just because of his age and his background, and I feel like he's constantly improving. Now, he's obviously coming off that ACL injury. I do think he'll be back like late summer, finally, after the Armfield fight, because I believe he was training for another fight, and then he tore his ACL, but he's like 6-2 in the UFC or something. Armfield, I think, is very decent, and I do think Seri City beating Garrett Armfield is more impressive than the Jake Hadley win. The Jake Hadley win was a lot more dominant, though, for Cameron Smotherman, and Garrett Armfield, you could argue he won that fight, but I do think Seri City got the first 2 rounds, gassed out in the third. Smotherman's now got a full camp. They both fought around the same time. Smotherman in mid-October. Seri City fought on the Canada card. City's a big, rangy guy for bantamweight. Smotherman, I think, is the perfect size for bantamweight. He's 5, I think he's a little bit stocky. He's 5'9", so he's like good enough height, and he's got more stockiness to him, while Seri City's very skinny and gasses out, and I think the weight cut does a little bit of a number on him. So I'm honestly going to pick Cameron Smotherman to get this one done. I don't think the height advantage is going to be good enough for Seri City to beat him at range. I don't think and I don't think he's going to be better than Cameron Smotherman so much in the first 2 rounds to where he wins both 2 rounds convincingly before he gasses out in the third. I could absolutely see Cameron Smotherman beating Seri City by 3rd round finish when we notice Seri City starting to get tired. I'm going to pick Cameron Smotherman to get this one done. I'm a believer in Cameron Smotherman. I do think he's actually very decent, and his win against Jake Hadley was very impressive in terms of just the production that he had in that fight. So I'm going to pick Cameron Smotherman to get this one done. I'm going to say decision. I'm going to say it's actually going to be a split decision. I think it's going to be a very, very close fight. But I'm going to say Cameron Smotherman gets it done. I think that round 1 will go to Sarahi City. Round 2 will be very close. I think it'll be lean Smotherman. And then round 3 will be an obvious Smotherman round. And they'll give it to him for the decision. Moving up the card. Montel Jackson versus Daniel Marcos. All right. This is a big one. Montel Jackson, ranked bantamweight. I believe he's ranked number 15 or 14 in the division. He's on a 5-fight win streak. Recently coming off his KO win against Damon Blackshear where he blasted him down the middle with the straight right hand and put him out. Now, what I'm upset about is that was on the Colorado card, and he hasn't fought since. Like, Montel Jackson, I already know that he's not going to be super active, but if you're going to be a ranked bantamweight, you need to be more active than this, dude. So I'm really kind of cheering for Daniel Marcos here, but Daniel Marcos has won a lot of really close decisions that you could argue were not his wins. He had a very, very close last fight with Adrian Yanez. He's 17-0, Daniel Marcos. And I think it's a little bit inflated. Now, here's Daniel Marcos is going to tit for tat for you. He's going to go tit for tat for you on the feet. And he's going to try and bounce around on the outside and narrowly beat you by decision. I don't think he's going to be able to do that against Montel Jackson. I think Montel Jackson is a lot better than Daniel Marcos. I also think Damon Blackshear beats Adrian Yanez at this point in their careers, and beating Damon Blackshear the way he did, very impressive when you consider that Yanez nearly beat Daniel Marcos. And Montel Jackson, you are not going to be able to go tit for tat with him unless you are a fantastic striker. Now, Daniel Marcos is very good, but I think Montel Jackson's a lot better. I like the momentum for Montel Jackson. He's got to be healthy if he's fighting right now. He's got to be healthy. He's big for the bantamweight division. He's going to look big in there. And yeah, I think Montel Jackson gets this one done. I'm going to say by 3rd round KO. I think he sleeps Daniel Marcos, finishes him. Or, maybe it'll be a dominant decision, but I think he's going to sleep him in the 3rd. I think we could see Montel. Now, here's the thing. Montel Jackson is very straight down the pipe, and he's very parallel in terms of his movement. He never really changes angles. If he moves forward, he will move backward next. I don't think Daniel Marcos is the guy to beat him, though. I think that Montel Jackson will need to have a Davison Figueiredo. I think Marcus McGee beats him. Yeah, I mean, that's just a couple, but I think there are ranked bantamweights that would beat him. Cheeto Vera would beat him. I don't think Montel Jackson would be able to sleep Cheeto Vera, and I think Cheeto Vera would beat Montel Jackson. You're going to need someone who's going to be able to change the angle on him a little bit. Well, Cheeto's not even a great example of that. I mean, Corey Sandhagen would have his fun with Montel Jackson. Montel's got to improve that part of his game if he really wants to get to the top, and he's also got to get more active. I don't bank on both of those happening, so I'm going to pick Montel Jackson to get this one done, but I don't know what comes after this, so we'll see what happens. But I'm going to say Montel Jackson, 3rd round TKO, catches Daniel Marcos on the end of a right hand. Moving up the card to the feature fight, Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Daniel Rodriguez, D-Rod. Man, Unk versus Unk. Rodriguez is coming off a close win against Alex Morono. I think Rodriguez is done at this point in his career. I think they're both kind of done, but I think Ponzinibbio, with his natural athleticism, his height, his slick kickboxing ability in moments, and he has more of the threat to put you out on the feet than Daniel Rodriguez does. Daniel Rodriguez, in my mind, is going to keep this fight very slow-paced. I don't think he's going to be super crazy active. D-Rod is fun, but I think at this point in his career, his fights are noticeably getting slower than they used to be, man. He used to be so much more active and on it, but I feel like, and then also, I don't think he has been as active in general for his fights recently, while Ponzinibbio's coming off a TKO win in January. It's really good for him in terms of activity. So I'm going to say Ponzinibbio gets this one done. I think he's got a really impressive record. I think he's got guys. He's fought better guys than Daniel Rodriguez has, and more consistently at least. So I'm going to pick Santiago Ponzinibbio. I'm going to say by decision. He could get the KO, though. He could get the KO. I'm going to say by decision. I don't think he'll chin D-Rod. I think he wins this one by decision, and I think it'll be I think it might be a little slow-paced, to be honest, and could be a little boring. These are both older guys, but I do think Ponzinibbio will get this one done. Moving up the card. All right, Reiner de Ridder versus Bo Nickel. Let me get a drink of water before I get this one going. I got to be ready for these final two fights at least. Oops. Okay. This is a really hard fight to predict. It's very 50-50. Very close. And there's a lot of different ways that it could go. Now, if you watch back Reiner de Ridder's fight with Gerald Meerschaert, his fight with Kevin Holland was too quick. I mean, he just submitted him, used his body weight, and took advantage of that, and he was able to, get the win. But on the feet, man, Reiner de Ridder has no idea what he's doing. Absolutely no idea. And he has to rely on getting you on the ground. Bo Nickel beat Paul Craig on the feet. Not by a lot, but he did. And that's, I think his ability on the feet is actually better than Reiner de Ridder's, to be brutally honest. I think that he has more KO ability than Reiner de Ridder does. And, I'm just debating because I could totally see Reiner de Ridder getting him in a submission position. Bo Nickel thinks he's just going to get right out of it, and he doesn't at first. And he starts to panic a little bit. De Ridder is too big, too strong, and then Bo Nickel gets caught in a Darce choke. I could see something like that happening. Now, Bo Nickel, I think, is actually very decent. Like, I think that his development is real. I do think that he has the ability to be a very good prospect. And I hope he makes it to the top. It's great for the sport if he makes it to the top. And this is his first real big matchup. And this is going to be a hard fight for him. I do think his anti-grappling is good enough to not be beaten by Reiner de Ridder. It's going to be hard. I don't think he submits Reiner de Ridder. I don't think he submits him or dominates him on the ground. I think this might be very similar to the Paul Craig fight. To be brutally honest, I could see Bo Nickel being very tentative, firing in on overhand rights when they close the distance, and maybe occasionally going for a little trip or getting the hand on a single leg. But I don't know how much, Bo's really going to initiate the grappling here. And I don't think if he does, he's going to win by submission. I think if he does, it should be related to a ground and pound. Because I do think de Ridder's ground and poundable, if you know what that means. Like, if you get what I'm trying to say here. Like, I really do think that Bo Nickel could get down Reiner de Ridder. And if he can get on his back and get him out and start raining down punches, I really do think I could see Bo Nickel starting to take over and Reiner de Ridder quitting on the bottom. Now, it depends if Bo can get him in that position. I think he can. I don't know how often he will, and I don't believe in his ability quite enough to say he will guaranteed do that. So, I'm going to pick Bo Nickel by decision, and I could see it being a little boring. I think it's going to take someone a little more well-rounded at middleweight to beat Bo Nickel. I could honestly see Paulo Costa beating Bo Nickel. There's guys, I could see Fluffy beating Bo Nickel. I could see Cannonier beating... yeah, actually, I'd pick Cannonier to beat Bo Nickel. Right now, at least. Even despite his age, I really do think that would be the case. So, I'm going to say Bo Nickel gets it done, and he becomes a ranked middleweight, but it could be a little bit of a lackluster performance again. So don't be shocked if we see that. Hoping to see him against a striker in his next fight. Moving up the card to the main event, Corey Sandhagen versus Davison Figueiredo. Now, everyone's saying Corey. All the odds are going to Corey, and I get it. Corey is a lot bigger than Davison Figueiredo. He's got the skill and the speed to match Davison Figueiredo. What I worry about is, can Davison Figueiredo catch him on the end of a punch? Davison Figueiredo's got fucking power, man. He does. But Corey Sandhagen does not get touched in a lot of his fights. He really doesn't. And his Umar fight really wasn't a terrible performance. He just got slightly outdone in every single position, essentially. That's why it was such a 5-0 dominance decision. I thought it was 4-1 to 3-2. I thought really 4-1 for Umar. But it was just like Umar just kind of like put him in every single position they had was close. And so the fight seemed a lot closer than it really was. But Umar would just slightly do better in those exchanges, and wrestling exchanges, and striking exchanges. And I think that was really just the issue for Corey Sandhagen. Now Corey's obviously more motivated going into this fight. And I think, sorry guys, I've had a long week. I'm kind of feeling that same vibe that everyone else is getting. I could see a Corey Sandhagen masterclass coming in this weekend. I really could. Figueiredo's last loss to Petr Yan was kind of bad. If you watch that fight again, guys, Petr Yan kind of took him to school. And took him to school over the course of 5 rounds. And he put it on Davison. And Davison Figueiredo, I worry about his age. He's 37, man. A lot of miles on the clock now. Been in a lot of wars at flyweight specifically. Now, I do like that he doesn't have to, drain himself to 135. But, man, Corey is so much bigger than him. And I just don't see Figueiredo being quite good enough to match up with him. I mean, let's talk about Figueiredo's opponents at bantamweight before he got the fight with Petr Yan. It was Cody Garbrandt, Rob Font, right? Rob Font, Cody Garbrandt, and Chito Vera before the Petr Yan fight. Vera's a big bantamweight, but he just kind of stands still. So Figueiredo would go to town on him. Rob Font isn't that big of a bantamweight, and Davison Figueiredo has the ability to outstrike him. Cody Garbrandt, he submitted him on the ground. The feet, it was kind of close, and Garbrandt was fast. But again, not too big of a guy to where you can't control him. Corey Sandhagen's going to be way too big for Davison Figueiredo. That is my prediction. And I think at this point in his career, I don't think Davison has the weight advantage. I think Corey's going to be way heavier going into the octagon. I could honestly see a 10-pound weight advantage in Corey's favor. I think he'll weigh in probably 150 the night of, and Figgy will probably weigh in at 143. I could see something like that, maybe a 7-pound weight advantage. I don't think Davison's going to really be able to implement his grappling. If Corey could defend some Umar exchanges, I really don't think Davison Figueiredo is going to completely out-grapple Corey Sandhagen or get him in the same situations that Umar did. And on the feet, man, Corey is so good. He's not going to stand there with you and try and trade like a Cody Garbrandt or a Rob Font. He's going to bounce around. He's going to move around. He's not really going to let you touch him. I could see Figueiredo getting very frustrated by that. And Corey Sandhagen's going to be picking at him from the range. And I just think that's going to be the story of the fight. And I could honestly see a Corey Sandhagen masterclass coming in where we're all like, he deserves a title shot now. And, I mean, or you get him versus Petr Yan too at some point. Maybe on the Abu Dhabi pay-per-view. I don't think Corey will be ready to turn around for late July for the Abu Dhabi fight night. Maybe, especially if he gets a finish. But I don't think he's going to get a finish. Do I, actually? No. I'm going to say no finish. I'm going to say Corey Sandhagen gets it done. And I'm going to say by decision, but I'm going to say dominant decision. He could get a finish, but I'm going to say by decision. Just a gut feeling I've got. Alright, that's it for me. Appreciate you all watching. Sorry for not uploading this week. I've got some clip I found that I want to break down and talk to you guys about. It's kind of suspicious. Alright, but yeah. So, that's all I'll say. I'm going to chill this fucking weekend. I'm not recording, so don't prepare for anything this weekend until at least Sunday or Monday, at the latest. Or at the earliest, sorry, for the recap of this card. So, that's what I'll say. Alright, thanks, guys. Appreciate you all watching. Whoever you are. Bye.